And we're live.
Good afternoon or morning, CABC family, depending on your time zone. John Garcia Jr. here. Producer Kev is alongside on this beautiful Tuesday, December 4th, 2018, where it becomes a bigger day than most of us woke up anticipating. Surely I did not anticipate the Urban Meyer news dropping today. The news is not surprising. The timing maybe a little bit, but the deeper you look into it, you see kind of why the timing was most appropriate for Urban Meyer. So we're going to talk about that today. Spur that into recruiting. Of course, Alabama, after multiple Ohio State targets, really centered around Jordan Battle, who was a guy Bama had some confidence with, regardless of the Urban Meyer future and status with Ohio State. So we'll spur that into some recruiting talk. We've been team heavy, obviously, SEC championship game, Iron Bowl before that, college football playoff, matchup with Oklahoma, all those things considered. We've spent a lot of time on the team, and now we do need to shift gears a little bit towards recruiting, but we'll sprinkle in some college football news in between because it's been a busier Tuesday, as we said, than many of us anticipated. So, producer Kev, I'll let you kind of share your opening thoughts and tell us where we need to go with the conversation from the jump.
All right. Obviously, the Urban Meyer news is big. I think that it mainly affects right now where Bama concerns is. I think it affects Jordan Battle. I think Bama had a good shot with Jordan Battle before this whole Urban Meyer situation, and I think Battle was pretty solid with Urban. I think now that Urban leaving, I think that opens up the door for him to be in Alabama's class. Um, so I think that he was, he was really pretty strong, and I think that he had that that bond and that over recruitment and stuff with Urban. And I think his dad was on record saying, that they were committed to Urban and the Buckeyes. But I think with him leaving, I think that opens the door for Alabama.
Yeah, and talk about timing here. So Urban Meyer set to resign. He will coach the bowl game for those of you wondering about bowl picks and Rose Bowl stuff and maybe some gambling. He will coach the bowl game before giving way officially to Ryan Day. But the timing is interesting from a recruiting perspective, and that's I think Urban deserves credit for that. I know again we didn't anticipate this news on a Tuesday morning, but I think that's really the only reason why you would put this news out on a Tuesday morning. It is to get ahead and out in front of trying to maintain these commitments and kind of turning the page for those targets that Ohio State is trying to close with. Not a ton of overlap with Alabama there. Really, Jordan Battles the focal point of the Alabama Ohio State fallout with this move. But for the majority of Ohio State commitments, they are expected to remain on board. And obviously, those top targets now know that focus shifts over to Ryan Day and his staff, which is expected to largely be similar to what Urban Meyer has in place. The only name I'm hearing, ironically enough, that could be under a little bit of question is one of the most notable assistants on that staff, Greg Schiano. Of course, the Ohio State defense wasn't good this year. Even in their best win, Michigan put up, what, Kev, 32, 39, something like that. So, the Ohio State defenses of yesteryear are seemingly gone at this point, and Greg Schiano's taking some heat for that. I mean, anytime Purdue boat races you, the DC should take some heat. But regardless of that, this is a recruiting move for Urban Meyer. This is a move to let recruits know the truth and try to get out in front of it. So in that small light, I do commend him for stepping up on a random Tuesday because, look, the early signing period is 2 weeks from tomorrow, 15 days away from kids, and the majority of kids committed to all of these schools will sign. So I do commend him for that, and obviously it gives a bit of a hat tip to Ryan Day to get going and be able to visit kids and say, hey, I'm going to be the head coach. There's not going to be a big difference. We've already done this before. I mean, he won 3 games at the beginning of the season while Urban was suspended for the whole, you guys know it by now, fiasco. So I think you do hat tip the crew a little bit there. But speaking of visits and timing, this is going to get really interesting for Alabama, and the focus is Jordan Battle, as Kev said, and sure enough, and some say this was planned yesterday, but ironically enough, Alabama's sending 2 assistants to see Jordan Battle today at St. Thomas Aquinas. I believe Joel Panunzio, Carl Scott, the area recruiter and DB coach for Alabama, will be in South Florida to check in with Jordan. And what is important about that? One, Nick's not going yet, so the one official visit, or the one head coaching visit that is allotted, Nick is saving that for a later date. So that, I think, tells you just how close this thing is. Typically, and this is tracking Nick over the last 7 years. It's not always the case, but typically you want your head coach to visit relevant to the status of the commitment. What does that mean? The head coach is on the road early. Those kids are fairly solid. For instance, Nick Saban was with Talia Tagovailoa last night. Nick Saban was with Brandon Turnage last night. He'll be taking his official visit kind of in that area, in that Mississippi-Alabama corridor. He did see Nakobe Dean. But for the most part, with commits or targets, you get the early visits out of the way, kind of securing official visit dates, wrapping things up, if you will. With 15 days remaining until pen meets paper, you want to save those critical battleground kids for the tail end of that, as far as the planning for those in-home visits. So I think it's interesting that Jordan Battle not on the Nick Saban slate today, as far as we know. Joe Panunzio, as well as Carl Scott, expected in South Florida. So that means Nick can double up on that at some other point and get back down to South Florida. So just a little note there to read between the tea leaves. Typically, for kids deciding early, you want those late officials and the late in-homes from your head coach and from arguably the best closer in recruiting history, Nick Saban. So expect a lot of pressure Jordan Battle's way. I cannot imagine what his phone has been looking like today, but Alabama will see maybe its top defensive back target down the stretch, Jordan Battle, today. DBs are still a big part of this recruiting class. We just mentioned Brandon Turnage was seen by Alabama. There's a bit of a battle to hold on to him. I mean, the kid is basically an Oxford kid. So there's always been an Ole Miss cloud hanging over that recruitment. Jeff Carter's another DB we've talked about quite a bit, visited for the Iron Bowl unofficially, expected to officially visit this weekend, along with some other guys here in the class of 2019. So DB is going to be interesting down the stretch. Marcus Banks is still in the conversation. He just visited FSU officially. Keem Dent, the FSU commitment, speaking of the Noles, is in the mix as well, although we just haven't seen as much of a push from Alabama, at least not yet. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but we haven't seen that as much yet, which I think tells you Battle may be higher on the board than most of these others. But Bama's in South Florida today, so no reason they can't stick down there overnight and maybe see Dent tomorrow, or maybe they already have. We just hadn't caught up to that news quite yet. But DB will be very interesting here down the stretch for Alabama. Could they add one? Could they add more than one? Either way, Jordan Battle, especially with today's news, should be thrust right back to the top of that conversation. Kev, do we want to kind of stay on recruiting a little bit?
Yeah, I actually wanted to bring up and see what your thoughts are as far as with the announcement that Chip Lindsey won't be returning as the offensive coordinator at Auburn. How do you think that affects George Pickens' recruitment? And
That's a good question. Lindsey's his guy.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, you think that
Lindsey coached Pickens' big brother, who plays for the Raiders. His name escapes me at the moment. In high school, at Spain Park High School. He's a Birmingham guy. He's a Hoover guy. And obviously, George Pickens is a Hoover guy as well. So I think that affects him pretty good. But, I think it could affect Auburn in general and potentially losing Pickens. But I'm starting to wonder if Bama's going to punt on wide receiver. They have not offered Javarius Johnson, who isn't going to sign in December, but we expect a push for Auburn or someone else to try to get him to sign in December. They haven't seemingly pushed for Pickens in the last couple of weeks. Still haven't got him on campus for an official visit. He was at LSU over the weekend, Florida State before that. Georgia's in the mix for him as well. So there's still a lot of suitors out there for George Pickens. But either way, Auburn fans can't feel very comfortable with the Chip Lindsey news because that was Pickens' main connection. There was some Gus connections as well, obviously Bo Nix and a couple of other factors, but really the Chip Lindsey deal was kind of phase one in that recruitment, and now Les Miles snatches him up, and I think this is a great move for Les and Chip. I think you see a little bit more freedom with Chip, and if Les has learned his lesson from LSU, where he kind of had a stranglehold on that offense, even though he was more of a defensive guy. He wanted it run a certain way. Well, you would think with a couple of years off of coaching, he has kind of gone to the Nick Saban school of open-mindedness and said, okay, we need to open things up a little bit. And Chip Lindsey has been able to put up big numbers at a lot of different stops from high school through college, and you would expect him to have more reign than he did at Auburn, because we know at Auburn, it's Gus's offense.
Yeah,
No matter the OC, it's what Gus wants to do. And that's why he hasn't been able to retain some pretty good play callers. Rhett Lashley, Chip Lindsey, guys who elsewhere have had a lot of offensive success, haven't had as much at Auburn. And it seems like there's always a short stay in order at Auburn because of that friction between Gus's offense and whatever the OC wants to do. And I think that's been a constant problem right up there with developing quarterbacks at that program. And it's been a big detriment to what that program is supposed to be. So Chip, I think, frees himself up, goes to Kansas, where he's going to have to free things up and open things up to compete in that conference. You have to score points in the Big 12. So I do think it's a good move for Chip. Great pull for Les Miles. And selfishly, I hope Kansas comes down to the Yellowhammer State and recruits more Bama kids, because I think there's 75 P5 type kids in the state this year, but only 50 or so will end up in the Power 5. The number I believe right now is at 36. I actually just counted the other day. So you want Kansas and some of these other schools to make a late push for those kids. Selfishly, I want that as well. I would expect Chip Lindsey, again, who's a Birmingham guy, to initiate some of that offensively and get in on some of these under the radar types, maybe even some Hoover guys, not named George Pickens, although I'm sure he'll get a Kansas offer if he doesn't have one at this point. All right, so George Pickens, I do think, is affected by this move against Auburn, but I don't know if it's a direct correlation to Alabama. I don't know if Bama skyrockets way up because of this, just because of Alabama's stance on wide receiver. Look, we all know what they brought in 2 years ago with those 4 guys. Not all of them are going to go pro after next year. Last year, they brought in multiple guys. They do have one committed right now in John Mechie. They redshirted guys in the last couple of years. Xavier Williams will redshirt this year. Tyrell Shavers redshirted last year. So there's a natural stagger, even though you haven't brought in big numbers in every class. So I don't think receivers as big a deal. I don't think that decision is final from Alabama. They could turn up the heat late for a Javarius Johnson, for a George Pickens, maybe one of these Ohio State receiver commits, but I don't expect it at this point. I just think there's too many priorities elsewhere. We mentioned defensive back. We all know linebacker's still a big deal. I mean, Nakobe Dean and Henry To'oTo'o are still out there, even though you have 2 linebackers now committed with Harris joining Shane Lee. How could you say no to one of those guys? I don't see it really happening. So between linebacker, DB, really defensive spots, linebacker, DB, D-line, I just don't think you can use an extra spot, if there is one, on wide receiver based off of need. I think that spot goes to defense just about every time. So that's where I think all considered, wide receiver overall isn't as big of a priority. But if you're Auburn, this news hurts you a little bit with George Pickens. There's no doubt about that, and he's not a December guy, so you're gonna have to fight to hold on to him regardless of how he feels following this Chip Lindsey news. So that's gonna be tough for Auburn to overcome, but we'll see. But I don't think Bama's in the driver's seat for George Pickens, because I don't think Alabama wants to be at this time.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it comes back to, like we talked about before, I think it's going to come back to the number of spots left available. And I just don't think, with the priorities that we feel like Bama has set now, I don't think a second wide receiver is top of that list, especially when you have the likes of Nakobe Dean, To'oTo'o, and then obviously the one like the Ishmael Shopsters and Clay Webbs and Evan Neals and Trey Sanders is out there uncommitted, signing early, but you still, especially with Pickens not being an early enrollee guy, right. I think that they're going to let the class fill out like it is. And if it comes down to it, you might just not see a spot at Bama for him.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, this
I
is
know.
Des Bryant type cat, in my opinion. But I think that's where Bama is at wide receiver. It's just not as big of a need right now. There are other guys. So
Yeah. So, all right. So staying with recruiting. We're getting some questions about it in the chat, so I'll go ahead and ask it. I had it planned for in the show anyway. How do you think the Maryland Mike Locksley situation plays out for not only for Mike Locksley, but for the DMV guys that he has committed now and offensive players moving forward?
yeah, that's another really good one. And I think that's where you look at the timing of all of this.
Yeah.
Urban Meyer's trying to get out in front of things. Ryan Day's trying to get out in front of things. And these schools that are looking for a head coach need to hire them as soon as possible. And I thought following that SEC title game on Saturday, you would see movement pretty quickly across the country. And we hadn't seen that yet with Mike Locksley. So I do think that tells you that this thing is maybe still got a ways to go, or it's not a guarantee that he's gone.
Yeah.
I think that's because Maryland is a school he's been at. That's his area. Recruiting such a big deal in the Big Ten. They have to get a guy like that. But he's the OC at the number one team in the country. He's about to potentially have a Heisman winner added to his resume under his watch. There's a lot of positives towards staying at Alabama for Mike Locksley. And let's think of the Kirby Smart theory that we've thrown out for years. Not a bad gig when, worst comes to worst, you're not to blame for bad things, and you get lumped into the good when great things happen. Kirby Smart rode that wave for a long time under Nick Saban until it was the perfect opportunity when Georgia came up. Is Maryland Mike Locksley's Georgia? I'm not sure. So I think there's some other factors there. He's been a head coach in the past. It's not like he has to hit his bucket list or anything like that. So we know he wants to be a head coach. He's still young enough. He's damn sure a good enough recruiter to do so. But as another day or two goes by, you have to start wondering, is this a done deal for Maryland? I think that's the key before anything else. Now, if he does go, surely the questions will go to those DMV guys. But remember, Alabama's been able to recruit them well before Locksley, getting guys like Deshaun Hand and Cyrus Jones and many other five-star types, Jonathan Allen, before Locksley got to Alabama. So they were always able to get into that area and sell what Alabama is, particularly defensively. But offensively, I think there could be some questions there. You think of a guy like maybe a Keelan Robinson. How is he affected by a move like that? And that's where it gets even more interesting because of the early signing period. Again, 15 days between now and these kids signing. So every day that goes by where Locksley's not named the head coach at Maryland, I think is huge for Alabama in retaining those guys and obviously decreases the likelihood that Locksley's going to take that job. So, but I think Robinson, Darian Dalcourt, those are some of the guys who I think could be affected. But look, they're committed to the number one team and the number one offense basically in the country right now. And there's a very strong belief in general in recruiting over the years that I've covered a lot of assistants leaving that Alabama is going to be Alabama as long as Nick is there. And that has withstood losing tremendous recruiters. Think of Kirby Smart. Think of Mario Cristobal. These guys are literally recruiters of the year. Someday Tosh Lupoy is not going to be there. Mike Locksley's not going to be there. You withstood the loss of Lane Kiffin offensively, who went out and eval Jake Fromm and Tua Tagovailoa in a short span to bring them in. You've withstood all of those things. So Bama can withstand Mike Locksley, but I think the bigger question is, will it have to this year? If you can go through another year without losing a coach or 2 or 12, I think that's huge for Alabama because it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen under Nick Saban. I think you could make the argument that Pete Golding is more likely to leave than Mike Locksley. His name has come up a lot more in the last 48 hours than I've seen Mike Locksley's in terms of potentially leaving to Ole Miss, Oklahoma, or other places. So I think there's going to be some movement, most likely. It's just the way things have come to be. But I don't think either is a lock to leave. And I think 15 days out from early signing period kicking off. I think that's big news for Alabama.
Definitely. I think, like you said, I don't
think they lose both. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And there's a lot of good there's a couple good candidates for that Maryland job. I mean, Matt Canada's already there right now, and he's I feel like that's a strong candidate for the head coaching job. So I don't think that it's 100% that that Locksley leaves. Like you said, he's building a resume right now. If anything,
right? Maybe he's got NFL aspirations. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, who knows with what he's done this year? I mean, he's shown that he definitely can run an offense, and if you're looking for an offense, that's one to call. Obviously, another one that got scooped up pretty quick that can run an offense was Cliff Kingsbury. USC scooped him up as soon as he got let go. But yeah, okay. So we'll move kind of more into players as far as not necessarily dealing with coaching. Well, no, okay. He's dealing with a coaching loss as well. DJ Williams, the Appalachian State running back commit. Appalachian State's head coach is now headed to Louisville. But DJ's been building momentum through this process anyway. Am I correct, or did I see it wrong? He's going to be on campus for an official this weekend.
Yeah. And Bama hasn't even offered him yet. And I think that tells you this is the hottest recruited running back late in the cycle in the country. Edgerrin James' nephew, a kid who's playing quarterback at his high school, didn't play a lot last year, suffered through injuries. He's having the Josh Jacobs late breakout, basically. And he's having more attention down the home stretch than even Josh did. Josh, it was more of a Bama, Oklahoma deal late, and that was kind of it. A little bit of, I think, Memphis involved, if memory serves. Well, DJ Williams in the last 3 weeks has added Georgia, Texas, Auburn, Tennessee, Michigan a couple of days ago, and Alabama has gone down to see him with Joe Panunzio, although it has yet to offer a scholarship. So I think this is a twofold thing for Alabama. One, it checks your boxes and probably secures the top one or two backup options should something go awry with Trey Sanders. Let me preface this. I fully expect Trey Sanders in the class, but should something happen there or potentially with Keelan Robinson, I think DJ Williams, DeAndre Glass are your first ones out, if that makes sense. If we're talking about the bubble there, first ones out who would theoretically get that green light and get the call for Alabama. Williams from Florida, DeAndre Glass from Texas. So I think this could potentially secure that for Alabama. And then on the other side of it, for the Crimson Tide, this is kind of a nice little troll. Auburn is pushing for this kid. Auburn needs a bell cow back. We saw what they looked like this year without one. They're selling DJ on that. Michigan is involved here. Georgia is involved here. Georgia's going to get an official visit next weekend, Bama this weekend. So if Bama can do anything, we know Nick has taken guys in the past just so they don't play elsewhere. He won't say it ever, maybe when he retires. But Nick has taken scholarships and signed kids who he knew was not going to play at Alabama in order for them not to play at LSU or Georgia or Auburn, etc. Not saying DJ Williams is that, but there could be some of that should Bama jump in fully after this weekend, because it's pretty rare down the stretch with a kid who is signing early like DJ to get him to take an official when you hadn't even offered yet. So there's some expert recruiting going down with Alabama. It's the only school he would have visited without having offered to this point. And again, Michigan just offered and pushed for this same weekend, and he said no. He's coming to Alabama instead. He's already visited Auburn. He's already visited Miami. Again, Edgerrin James's nephew, so a lot of people think he's going to end up there, but he's still committed to Appalachian State. Now, I don't think he's going to end up at App State, but I do think if it was going to be Miami, he would have flipped basically when he got that offer. So I do think that he is still evaluating those options, and I know he's been overwhelmed with the late surge, even more so than Josh Jacobs was, because there's more candidates. There's more teams and contenders in the mix for this kid. But the caveat is that Bama hasn't offered, but he is signing December 19th. He wants to be done with the process. So I think Miami's got to hope that Bama doesn't offer, and Miami's got to hope that Georgia doesn't really push there at the end of the cycle, because they do at this point get that final visit. DJ Williams, a very interesting kid. Watch his tape. I mean, a lot of people think it's Josh Jacobs 2.0, and not just because he happens to play quarterback.
Awesome. Yeah, I really like that kid. And it just shows you the power of talent evaluation that is at a smaller school like Appalachian State, where they were the first in on this kid, and now he's blown up. But yeah, for me, obviously I'm close to Appalachian State. I have ties to Appalachian State, and selfishly, I would like to see him go to Appalachian State. But
yeah, losing the coach and all these other schools,
yeah, it just doesn't look that way. And he's blown up, and rightfully so. He's a very talented kid. So yeah, hats off to him as of here late. Some more, just a little bit more in recruiting. We're getting some questions on certain recruits, so we'll just hit those real quick, and before we move into somewhere else. So, DJ wanted to know if there was any updates on Keon Zipper. I know he's going to be at Florida this weekend for his official.
Yeah, I mean, he's been trolling. We've said this from the jump. I mean, I don't think he's coming to Alabama. I think he's been trolling from the jump. And he's good at it. He's good at it. I mean, he was tweeting all the hold that Tigers for LSU this weekend while up there. He's not going to LSU. This has been a Florida Miami battle forever, and it's no coincidence that Florida's getting the last or next to last visit out of the kid. I fully think that's where he ends up. It's just a matter of him actually having some fun before he signs with the Gators. But and again, and from the Alabama side of this, I think tight end is right there with wide receiver. You got one committed. You don't need a second one. I think offensive line on offense is more of a priority. I think another running back is much more of a priority than another tight end. I don't think receiver, tight end. I think those are the last two priority spots, period, for Alabama. I think all the spots on defense, whether it's one or two more DBs, at least one more linebacker, at least one more edge guy, at least one more front four guy, and then an offensive lineman. That's 5 spots. And right now you're at 22 commits. So you don't have much breathing room for another wide receiver or another tight end. We expect Trey Sanders to be added to that group as well. So that would be 6. There's just not spots really for anything. At that rate, you're already going to have to move somebody, gray shirt, whether you lose a commitment or not, etc. So it's going to be tight no matter what. So fringe positions like wide receiver and tight end, at this time, I don't see them being relevant for Alabama, despite at one point planning to take 2 receivers, planning to take 2 tight ends, planning to take some other guys at different positions. But at this point, it's just hard to trickle it all the way down to those spots unless it's some generational you can't say no to guy, as if Nakobe Dean and Henry To'oTo'o both call up today and say, hey, we want to roll with the Tide. Bama's going to accept both. But I don't think there's a lot of guys at those other positions where that matters and that applies, where they commit and call in, and Alabama shuts everything down to say, yes, you're in, we'll figure it out. I don't think that exists at wide receiver, and I don't think it exists at tight end.
Hold on.
Got some more for me there, Kev?
Hold on. So I don't know why my computer went on mute. Sorry.
Yep.
I was trying to mess with it. There we go. Am I there?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. People are asking about Kavonne. And I think Kavonne's going to Florida this weekend.
Right.
It's a makeup official. He was scheduled to take his official visit back earlier, but with the wildfires, they had a game pushed back, and they had to play on Saturday, and he wasn't able to make the Florida visit. He is going to Florida this weekend, and I think that I don't think he ends up at Florida. I think right now it's an Oregon. I think it's an Oregon, Florida State, Alabama battle right now. I think Oregon has the slight edge in everything right now. But because I really haven't heard much over the last couple of weeks with this kid. So I think it is a Florida State, Alabama, Oregon battle, and I give the slight edge to Oregon.
Yeah, I think it's too little, too late from Florida. They were out. They've been out in California the last few days recruiting. I know Dan Mullen's been out there to see guys that they think they're in it with. Chris Steele, Elijah Higgins, I believe, is the wide receiver, and Kavonne Thibodeaux as well. They did set that visit. That's a school that he has listed as a finalist. His final four for his commitment, which is December 15th, is Florida, Florida State, Alabama, Oregon. But basically everyone believes Florida is fourth on that list going into this trip. So, is there any school in the country that could make up 3 spots in a 48-hour allotted window for a 5-star like that from the other side of the country? It just seems like too much, too
Not good.
much, too much ground to make up for that staff. They can recruit, but that would be the swipe of the year if Kavonne Thibodeaux ends up at Florida. I don't expect it to happen. I think they're in much better position for some of those other Cali guys that we mentioned, not Thibodeaux. But he will take the visit. Why wouldn't he at this point? Again, he already had it scheduled, like Kev said. So this is just following through. Easy pitch for Dan Mullen. Hey, you were already going to come. We got an open window this weekend. This is Florida's biggest recruiting weekend of the year. They're trying to build that up. Why not headline it with yourself, which any 18-year-old would like to hear? So he's going to take that trip. Don't blame him. But I think elevating yourself 3 spots against Alabama, against a West Coast emerging power in Oregon, and even against Florida State, which has the long-standing recruitment of Kavonne because of that staff being at Oregon before Cristobal and company took over, that's a lot to overcome for any staff, much less the Gators. So yeah, they're not going to factor into it in the end. I think, like you said, Kev, I think this is a 3-team race. Oregon's probably the leader, and depending on where you listen, Alabama, Florida State, 2 and 3. I think the only team that has a chance with the late push is Alabama. I think the Ducks and the Tide will duke it out in the end for Thibodeaux. I think FSU had a lot of momentum, but it has died recently for Thibodeaux. I think they needed to get him committed before the tailspin they took, but obviously they didn't. So I do think with Bama needing one more edge guy, as we've said all along, Thibodeaux still more likely, I think, at this point than Nolan Smith. Maybe we hadn't said that in the past, but Nolan has taken a bunch of other trips. A bunch of other contenders have emerged for him. And usually that means you stick with what you got at that point. So I do think he ends up at Georgia. And like we've said with Thibodeaux, he's uncommitted. So Bama has to have a bit of a better shot there. And I still do believe that. And there's not a lot of edge guys, right? It's Thibodeaux, it's Smith, Chris Bogle from down in South Florida. And that's kind of it. So I'm not sure just who else is in that edge rusher conversation for Alabama, but we know they want to add one if they can. So maybe that's where you can compensate another spot at another position if Bama cannot land one of them. Now, Bama's not the favorite for either, right? Bogle has been linked more to Miami over the long stretch. Smith is committed to Georgia, and Thibodeaux, as we said, Oregon, Bama battle there. So Bama's not the overwhelming favorite for either guy. So maybe if you strike out on all 3 of those edge rushers, maybe another receiver or another tight end could be into the conversation. But Bama doesn't usually strike out with one strong position like that in the end. So I keep an eye on Kavonne Thibodeaux for sure, but not if I'm a Florida Gator fan, no.
Yeah, I think that if it's somewhere else, and it's hard because they're trying to make up a bunch of space on these other schools, and there's no game, there's no like there's not like
Right, that's
I don't
true.
know. I've always been the thinking that if you're taking an official and there's no game, it's harder to sell than when you visit on a game day.
Not to mention
And
the facilities race at Florida is not really there. I mean,
yeah,
they've got the indoor, but beyond that, they want to implement new facilities. So
yeah, I mean, you're talking about selling Gainesville, which I've been to Gainesville and there's not much to sell. and I've been to a Gators game, and there's still not much to sell. But moving on, we shall move on. Let's see here. I didn't know this, DJ. And DJ asked, "What do you think of Miami offering Evan Neal's older brother that hasn't played football in 3 years?"
I think it's going to have the same effect of Florida bringing in Umstead Sanders. None.
Exactly.
None.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I actually talked to him, Edric Neal, the older brother, but he's the smaller brother of Evan Neal. And it's the same thing as Trey Sanders. No disrespect to those other guys. Look, Umstead Sanders is playing SEC football, and Edric Neal is going to play somewhere next year. But Miami one, I don't think has officially offered yet. I talked to him over the weekend. He was on the visit with Evan. He visited Oklahoma along with Evan. But I mean, I guess I can go public with this. I mean, Edric told me, I'm not trying to piggyback off my brother. I want somebody who really wants me. So I actually think Alabama not even being involved with him is a good thing, because there's an element of these other schools just want me to get my brother kind of deal. And I don't think it's going to work anyway. But when the bigger brother, the older brother, isn't even doing what Umstead Sanders did and trying to push younger brother to join him just to play together, I think that's pretty telling. So I get why Mark Richt and company would want to host him and maybe pretend to recruit him. We don't know the full story, but the older brother's worried about that. So I envision this thing going where the older brother ends up at a school that Evan Neal's not even really being recruited by, and Evan Neal probably still ends up at Alabama, although he's going to take that Georgia trip. So I think that'll be kind of an interesting dark horse. If there's a dark horse for Evan, I would look for a blue blood recruiter like Kirby Smart to try to make that impact. Maybe even an Oklahoma trying to make that impact more so than Mark Richt. Just like we said with Florida and Thibodeaux, if Miami was going to get Evan Neal committed, they needed to do it a year ago. They needed to do it 6 months ago. Miami's losing commits to the O-line, 2 to Florida, actually, in the last couple of days. They're not exactly building up, and there's a lot of fire for that O-line coach as well. So there's just a lot of things that aren't adding up well for Miami, especially at the offensive line position, to even think they can compete with Alabama at this point for Evan Neal, despite Edric Neal's recruitment. The kid gets it, and I don't think he's ready to play those games. So I think he ends up elsewhere, as does his little big brother, Evan Neal.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? These schools trying to use the brothers and all. I mean,
I've never been a huge.
If they know those brothers aren't going to play.
Yeah, I've never been a huge fan of it. I don't think it is fair to the brother. I don't think that's fair. You're bringing in a kid that you have no intent. It's the same way with teammates, where they recruit a teammate just hoping to get the other teammate. I just don't think that's, because all that kid's gonna do is like a year and a half, 2 years later, he's gonna transfer.
Yeah, ask Sean Burgess Becker how it was being a package deal with Calvin Ridley. How'd that work out?
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna you're gonna transfer somewhere, and you're gonna play where you should have been playing in the first place.
Yep.
Yeah,
the real national champs.
The real national champs. But anyway, so we'll go a couple more with recruiting, and then we'll move into maybe some team and looking ahead and all that good stuff.
Gelato says to you is you should have said duh dumpster fire, but I get it. Yeah. I was playing on the alliteration, Gelato. Sorry.
The dumpster fire. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, do we have any news on Clay Webb?
Clay Webb's committing in 6 days. Nobody knows crap about it.
Yes. That's the true story.
Nick Saban was there yesterday. Kirby was there yesterday. Clemson's going to be there, but that's kind of it.
Yeah.
That's Clay.
Both head coaches.
Look, I mean, this is how. Okay, you want to know how real? I haven't even written this for 24/7. They might fire me. You know how real the Clay Webb intrigue is, and how little anybody knows about him. I got a call from somebody in Oxford who has been on the ground there longer than I've been alive, who says education is going to be the number one factor for Clay, and he's interested in a school that just lost its coach, Georgia Tech. Do I believe it? Probably not. But that is the epitome of who Clay Webb is. That is the epitome of this recruitment. Nobody feels good. Bama, Georgia, Clemson, Auburn, Georgia Tech, if they want to get involved, and however they're recruiting kids nowadays without Paul Johnson, nobody feels good here. So everyone's going to push as much as they can and kind of hope for the best. And that is just something we don't see. It could tell you that Clay don't know where he's going. It could tell you that he could make another visit or two and surprise some folks. None are planned, but he could do something like that because it's Clay Webb. Education's important. The kid wants to be an engineer. He's very smart. So he's looking at those things. So you would normally say, okay, that gives that gives Georgia Tech or somebody like that a bit of an advantage. Maybe Clemson, maybe Auburn, but that's the only buzz we hear from those schools. All of the most consistent buzz is still Alabama, Georgia, Georgia, Alabama, with a sprinkle of Clemson, depending on who you talk to. But that leaves us nowhere, right? That leaves us nowhere. So that's what the Clay Webb recruitment has been for 3 years, and it's no surprise that it's still like that down the stretch. So wherever he commits on December 10th, I'm trying to be there, but Clay Webb is so out there and spread out with this stuff that there's no ceremony right now. I'm literally on the phone trying to figure out how to be there, and there's no event right now, even though that's the date he's committing. That is Clay Webb. That is what's going down right here. Even though he's a 5-star and the number 1 center in the country and a kid everybody wants on their team, there is no certainty with any of those contending parties. But it's not for a lack of effort on Alabama's part with Saban and Key. It's not every head coach in this mix is going to go see him, but I don't think at any point any school is going to feel very confident in where they sit for Clay until that letter is in, until everything is official. I do think wherever he commits on Monday, that's where he ends up. I don't think he's going to commit to one school and sign with another. I don't think. But it's the most uncertain 5-star recruitment I've ever been around. And it's one of the closest I've been around. And that tells you a lot about just the type of kid he is. He's going to do his own thing. We've said it for years, and he's holding true all the way. And at this point, I'm rooting for him to kind of go the chaotic route. Go to Georgia Tech, Clay. Set the tone. They're not going to run the option, even though you would fit so well in that option. I don't know, man. Just stir it up. Pull an Ed Oliver. Why not? Go to Jacksonville State.
No, I said the dark horse was going to be like UAB. I feel like Clay was going to be like a UAB kid, and he was just going to go play
conference champs, man.
Play at UAB and dominate, and then go to the league, just like an Ed Oliver or something like that. He's just the fact that you just said that there's no ceremony. Who, like, what 5-star doesn't have have some sort of, even if it's just taking pictures with this family in front of the team banner, signing a letter, like, no, who doesn't have something? Some of these kids are planning full-blown parties and stuff. I know Kavonne Thibodeaux is having a birthday party / signing party, and like, I don't know.
It's a planned event. They got flyers, bro.
Yeah, like, they got my man's got promoters and stuff. Like,
this is how crazy covering Alabama recruiting is. They can get both of those guys.
Yeah,
that's all you need to know. That's what happens when you cover Alabama. They can get Clay Webb and Thibodeaux in the same class. Couldn't be more polar opposites in every single possible way, but they may get them both. So
true story.
Yeah, should be fun.
Yeah. So, all right. So you want to move into maybe talking a little team, looking forward to playoff type stuff here. We obviously we know that Bama has drawn the Sooners, the Oklahoma Sooners, in the Orange Bowl for the first round of the playoffs semifinals. It'll be at the Orange Bowl in Miami, which I think favors the Tide.
Yeah, Hard Rock Stadium, aka Pro Player Stadium, aka Joe Robbie Stadium, aka Land
Shark Stadium,
aka the NFL told them renovate this dumpster, or we're not playing any more Super Bowls here, despite your weather stadium.
Yes, fix it, or we're done. So that's where the first round of the playoffs is, semifinals, however you want to say it. I feel like if I say first round, there's more than two, so we'll go semifinal. against this Oklahoma team. And initially on our reactions to Sunday's show, I said that I didn't feel like Oklahoma stood a chance in hell. And I don't know. I started writing a story, and I started doing some research. And the more and more research I did, and the more and more I watched film, I'd still think they have a dumpster fire for a defense, but that offense intrigues me very, very much. And I don't think that I think that it's borderline an elite offense. I think without Hollywood Brown, I think that's a big piece of the puzzle for.
Is there any news on him? It's been so weird how there hasn't been.
I haven't seen anything. I looked today because I wanted to know. I want to know what's up with this kid because, I don't think that he changes the entire outcome of the game, but his presence definitely affects the game for Oklahoma.
I'm Googling it. Hollywood Brown will be ready for the game according to Reese Davis, because why would Reese Davis know that?
Why would Reese Davis lie? I mean, wow. Everybody trusts Reese Davis.
Lincoln Riley, quote, "We'd certainly love to have him, but I think as we proved Sunday, we've got other guys that are more than capable of stepping up if he's not ready."
Okay, that sounds like he's not playing. That quote sounds like he's not playing, and we're gassing up everybody else.
Yeah.
Okay,
and I don't think they have the guys.
No, not on the outside. And I said that I thought that they didn't have the guys up front either. Well, going back and watching film, they have some guys, but they don't ask them to do a lot. They don't ask their offensive line to do much at all except inside zone right, inside zone left. There's a variation of inside. It seems like almost a influence trap, like zone trap. It's really weird looking where they're pulling a guy, but they're still blocking zone type blocking. It's not. I don't know. So their entire offense is based off of that inside zone, and
really easy offense for linemen.
Yeah, it's the easiest offense you could ask an offensive lineman to block. Literally, zone step right, zone step left, pick up the man. There's no man blocking. It's pick up the guy that comes into your zone.
Yeah, even the pass pro is quick because of Kyler and that offense. So
yeah, and I think that the pass protection that I've seen is predominantly 3 to 5 step drops, quick game, get the ball out, and let playmakers make plays.
Not a lot of 7-step, not a lot of rollout there.
No, and so I think that their offensive line is good for what they are being asked to do, and I think that it's big. And I didn't realize that they have 3 players almost 1,000 yards rushing. The one back is over 1,000 yards. The second back is approaching 1,000 yards, and then you have Kyler Murray, who's approaching 900 yards.
It's a little ridiculous.
So the fact that I said that I don't think they can run the ball on selection show makes me reconsider that thought, saying maybe they can run the ball. Now, do I think they can run the ball on Alabama's defense?
Right, and that's the question. Nobody was saying their offense sucked or their O-line couldn't play or they couldn't be balanced, but we're talking about the 29.
Yeah, and we're talking about them playing one of the best defenses in the country. So I think that being said, I think they're going to have a hard time blocking the front 3. They're going to have – I think that the 2 edge setters and Christian Miller and Anthony Jennings are going to have pretty good games because they're going to see 1 to 2 things. They're going to see reach block, or they're going to see their man go away. And when their man goes away, they're probably a read guy. Yep. So now you're asking them to do is read or read run or read zone read. And it's the zone read, and they're either reading the in man on the line of scrimmage, or they're going to RPO it, and they're going to read the linebacker and hope that Mack Wilson or Dylan Moses bites on the run, and they're going to throw the ball over top to the tight end who's going to fill the void for the linebacker that's supposed to be there on the RPO.
And that's why I'm really curious about this game from Tosh's perspective. Tosh Lupoy, who we don't think is going anywhere, by the way. That's the guy who I think can really get sophisticated with this, because that Oklahoma O-line doesn't have to do much mentally. How can they mess with that? You want to mess with Kyler Murray as much as you can. Obviously, he's the trigger man. He's where everything begins. But the easiest way to contain him is to bring him down and bring pressure immediately. And obviously, science tells us, geometry tells us that the quickest way to do that is up the middle from point A to point B in a straight line. So how does Tosh stunt the lineman, shift the lineman, slant the lineman, timing with those linebackers who are both really good blitzers on the inside with Mack and Moses? How does he mess with those A gaps? Tosh Lupoy plus A gap issues could mean big plays for the Bama defense. And again, with how bad Oklahoma's defense is, Kev, you get a couple of turnovers. It's like 7-on-7, right? You get a couple of turnovers in this thing, and it's a wrap. It's a wrap, because we expect it tit for tat, score for score, right? That's the very surface level evaluation of this game. The total from Vegas is like 80, right? So everyone's expecting a shootout. Yeah, 79, which is ridiculous for an Alabama game, by the way.
With a 14-point spread.
Right. So everyone's expecting tit for tat back and forth. Bama creates 2 turnovers. Good night. Good night. So I think you increase the amount of risks you take if you're Tosh Lupoy. You're going to give up yards in this game. For these old school Bama fans who think that they're going to go and hold Oklahoma under 250 yards, like, please buy lottery tickets, because you think you're going to win the lottery every week too.
Yeah.
This offense will have the ability to produce chunk yardage. That's not the game. The game is the red zone and the turnover game. If you can limit Oklahoma there, I think you can run away with this thing and get through to a double-digit win, through to the Natty against Clemson, who I think we all would expect to beat Notre Dame. And I think the A-gap pressures with Quinnen Williams involved are just a dream scenario for Tosh Lupoy. So I think that's the matchup I'm looking at. I'm looking at those 2 interior D linemen and those 2 inside linebackers, those 4 guys, and how they can create pressure with Kyler Murray. The converse to that, or the counter to that, I should say, is how Oklahoma can control those 4 guys and try to run the football. As Kevin says, they're capable personnel-wise, but obviously they haven't faced a defense like Alabama. So that matchup, if you're watching 4 guys when Bama's on defense, watch Raekwon Davis, Quinnen Williams, Dylan Moses, Mack Wilson. Watch those 4 guys attacking the A gaps and just see how fun that could be. If they can get early pressure on Kyler, sacks and or turnovers, I think changes this whole game.
Exactly. And I think, I've seen it multiple places, and I don't necessarily agree with it. I see everybody talk about, what happened last time Kyler Murray played Alabama. Kyler Murray was on a dumpster fire team in Texas A&M. There was all types of stuff going on with that Texas A&M team.
Quarterback transfer, baby.
They lost 3 starting quarterbacks. So obviously there was something going on behind the scenes.
Bro, even Khalil Tate is leaving Kevin Sumlin.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you got like Kevin Sumlin's – if you want a quarterback to stay, don't hire Kevin Sumlin, apparently.
He should go to Auburn, by the way. My goodness.
Auburn.
Khalil Tate to Auburn?
Oh.
I mean, I'd rather have him than Kelly Bryant. I'd rather have Jalen Hurts than Kelly Bryant, too.
True story. Yeah.
Auburn, what are you doing?
You're hitting the wrong guy there, Auburn.
Chip Lindsey's like, yeah, I'm out, bro.
Yeah, we go. So, but yeah, I think it's a completely different situation than that Texas A&M team. That Texas A&M team wasn't that good. And I think that this Oklahoma team blows the doors off that Texas A&M team. And so the fact that, I know he threw 3 pick sixes in that game, but also he was young. He's had time to develop, and I think that he's a lot better of a quarterback than he was.
Yeah, I mean, he's got better receivers. He's got come on, man. He's got a more innovative offense.
Yeah. So he's got Lincoln Riley.
He's 3 years older.
Yeah. So just remember that, guys. Not saying that they are going to win, but just remember he's on a different team now,
And he's a millionaire.
Yeah, exactly. My man's got $4 million sitting in the bank chilling.
I'm surprised we haven't heard the narrative of, oh, well, he's just not into the game. He's not going to focus as much because he's a millionaire.
I know, right? That's the God with how lazy reporting is. I'm surprised that hasn't.
Oakland A's suggest Kyler Murray sit out college football playoff. Here we go.
Yeah, I think Lincoln Riley would be on the phone ASAP to Oakland,
like, hey, Moneyball, why don't you sit this one out?
Yeah. Hey, Brad Pitt and Jonah, whatever his name is.
Jonah Hill.
There we go. He changes so much I can't keep track of him. So yeah, I think that this game.
Kyler Murray was a freshman in that game. I'm looking it up now.
True freshman, right?
Yes, 2 for 4 for 21 yards.
Yeah. So.
It was a blowout. So.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't understand why that's coming up.
Yeah. So.
Maybe I'm missing something.
I think, and it's nothing against, but I think Bama fans like to compare old things to new things.
Like, oh, he played SEC ball. We torched him, so
he should win
the Heisman, and he should suck against us again.
He played in the SEC. He sucked. Therefore, he's now in the Big 12. He's going to suck still. So, not true.
Yeah, real quick. Speaking of Oklahoma players sucking and the perception, the Oklahoma O-line thing that we got into with, they actually have really good players, which me and you don't believe. They're okay, and they play an easy scheme. 3 total Oklahoma linemen in the NFL. 3. And one of them played before Oklahoma played like this. When you're talking about Trent Williams, the best one, he played before it was quite like this.
The only other one's Andre Brown, right?
No, Lane Johnson, who plays for the Eagles. Orlando Brown, sorry. Orlando Brown is the right tackle for the Ravens after injury, along with Bradley Bozeman, by the way, both on those lines starting as rookies. And then Trent Williams for the Redskins, who's been definitely the best Oklahoma product on the offensive line in the last decade. But again, when he played, it wasn't quite like this. It wasn't just zone left, zone right, quick pass pro. It was a little bit more, which is why he was the highest drafted, I think, between all of these guys.
Because Orlando Brown fell astronomically.
Yeah, because he had like the worst. What was it? The worst combine ever for an O-lineman, something like that.
Yeah, didn't he? And didn't at one point he walk out at some point? I think.
Yeah, there was some weird story with him at the combine, but he's massive and he can zone block. So he's now protecting Lamar Jackson. He was protecting Baker Mayfield and now Lamar Jackson. Like, happy birthday, O-lineman.
Yeah, for real.
So, but yeah, again, Oklahoma O-line, good, not great. Let's not overhype the scheme that really masks some of those things. And that's a credit to Lincoln Riley and that staff, right? That's a credit to those guys that they don't have to go get 5-star O-linemen to win conference titles and play in the playoff because they don't ask them to do 5-star things. And that's why, unfortunately for them, not a lot of them are sitting in the NFL. Alabama has probably triple that in the NFL, and nobody looks at Alabama as, oh, man, they produce great O-linemen. It eventually comes out if you dig into the research, but that's not the first thing or two that is said. It's linebacker, running back, Julio Jones, receivers now, even before you get to O-line in terms of perception. So let's not act like Oklahoma is Wisconsin or Iowa or, heck, even Alabama when it comes to O-linemen.
Yeah, let's not do that at all. I think I'm looking to see what the highest rated offensive lineman that Oklahoma has signed in the last 3 years.
I mean, they've probably signed a 5-star. I mean, Creed Humphrey was pretty highly rated. Let me see. Creed Humphrey. He got hurt in the game too, by the way.
Yeah, he was hurt. He got hurt in the Big Ten title game.
Creed Humphrey was a 4-star, number 144 in the country.
Well, that's the highest. That's the highest one I've found.
Right, and that's about right. So you credit that team for building around those type guys. They're in it for Evan Neal, by the way.
Yeah, they are.
But Evan Neal's about the league, so
they got him out there.
I don't think Oklahoma's going to be in the right position for him because Evan Neal's focused on Sundays, and I think
he will be.
Yeah, Evan Neal, it's going to be Bama, maybe Miami. And again, if there's a dark horse, I would watch Georgia because they're going to be churning out O-linemen in the NFL with how good this group has been over the last 2 years, for sure.
Yeah, there will be some big names out of that group.
Yeah.
All right. So we will look. Let me look through the chat here and see.
Yeah, we'll get some questions. Wrap it up.
What we got going on.
DJ says Urban Meyer to Auburn.
Well, I posted the picture of Butch Jones and said, "Does Urban Meyer know about the Bama analyst internship program?"
Butch Jones. I always want to say Butch Davis.
I know, so do I. I always want to call him Butch Davis.
Butch Davis, heck of a job at FIU, Butch, if you're listening. Heck of a job this year.
Absolutely.
Bowl game. I think they went to their conference title game and lost or something.
Love Butch Davis. Somebody wants to what's up with BJ Emmons? That's a good one.
BJ was at the Iron Bowl, right?
Yeah, BJ was at the Iron Bowl. I don't know why, but I mean,
BJ's on his Clay Webb kick right now, man. He's just doing his own thing.
Yeah, so he's been back in Hutchinson for the last little bit that I am aware of, according to.
He's hooking up his academics right now, which he should.
Yeah. So he's finishing his Hutchinson stuff, and then the next question would be: is FAU still holding that spot for him? Don't know.
They should.
They should, but it's been yet to see or no for that one. BJ, really good kid. Hope he gets back on the field. What about the tackle from West Virginia? I always forget his name.
The tackle from West Virginia?
Yeah. The
Ohio State commit. Or you mean Darnell Wright? I'm sorry.
Darnell Wright. There we go.
Wright.
That's who Darnell Wright. I think
it's still those three O linemen. Those are the ones Bama's in on. It's Neal, it's Webb, and it's Wright. I believe Bama's gone out to see him at least once. Yeah. But there's some questions with Tennessee and there's some questions with Ohio State with him. So this could be a benefit with this Urban Meyer situation. But there's Tennessee's hold the longest buzz over the longest period of time. I don't think there's really a question there. So I think Bama. I think he's the third most likeliest to commit to Bama of those three linemen, if that makes sense. So Evan Neal, Clay Webb, then Darnell Wright. Not in talent, but in likeliness of entering this class. And heck, they're all 5 stars. So I think Bama's great if they get one. They would love to get 2. But they're probably okay landing just one of them. And I think the likeliness is definitely Neal, Webb, and Wright. I think it's Neal, drop off, then Webb, drop off, then Wright, if that makes sense in terms of who's most likely. But all those guys are signing December 19th. And I think Evan Neal announced over the weekend that he's going to do it on ESPN. So he's not a big party guy either, but I'm sure ESPN was like, hey, IMG Academy, you have a lot of guys. Let's go bring some cameras down there and ask those guys who are ready to make decisions to hold off a little bit until then. So
him and Trey both are doing it.
Yeah, I should probably go down there that day.
You should probably do that.
I'll be in Auburn tomorrow, by the way. People on this pod who love Auburn. I'll be at Auburn the rest of the week. Woo!
State championships.
Yeah, some guy named Talia. It's cool. The state championship game tomorrow night, the low is 29 in Auburn, and the 2 starting quarterbacks for Thompson High School and Central Phoenix City are both from Hawaii and Miami, respectively, and they're playing for it all in 29 degrees because football in America is amazing.
Well, it's just like last year, it was snowing.
Yeah, and then last year it was snowing.
Yeah, so
yeah. It should be fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So let's see. Any more got going on in here? Oh, my man reported us. That's cool.
Yeah. So this might be the last podcast ever. So we love y'all. Appreciate it.
Dang it, Timmy. I know you didn't mean to, but
I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, if they shut us down, I mean, good Lord.
There's way more important things they could be shutting down. Murray, 350. Yeah, I think. Where is Hugh Freeze going?
I hope he goes to Auburn. He probably won't. I mean, Hugh Freeze is coveted. Some people think he's going to be a head coaching candidate.
I mean,
Say what you want about Hugh Freeze. That offense at Ole Miss beat Bama multiple times.
Yeah, like
Hugh Freeze can do some things offensively.
Yeah.
If I was one of these stuck in the mud programs with a bank account and tradition, that's who I would be trying to get. If I was Ed Orgeron, I'd make that phone call. If I was Gus, I'd make that phone call. Although Gus isn't going to relinquish any power. And some of these, if I was App State, I'd probably make that phone call. But they're a little too conservative to hire a guy like that. I would make that phone call if I was a team in need of offense. I would make the Hugh Freeze phone call and at least gauge the interest because again, he's been remorseful. He's said all the right things. He's done all the right things. We love second chances in this country, and we love ball in this country. And that guy can coach. No matter what you think about him personally, he can coach. Just like Kareem Hunt can run the football. So guess what? He's probably going to be in the NFL next year running the football. So there's a difference between morality and winning, and you got to find kind of that line. And when do you forgive? Right? We preach forgiveness. When do you get to that point from a football perspective? So I think Hugh Freeze will definitely be calling plays somewhere pretty significantly as soon as next year.
And don't forget, he can recruit.
Oh yeah, he could recruit. I mean, look, Ole Miss cheated and all that. Like that's fine. Everybody understands that. But you can't just say, "Hey, here's $1. Come play for me." It's not that simple. Like you still got to build those relationships. And there were a lot of you couldn't do that to everybody, right? And they were getting classes and guys that they basically never got before that point. It couldn't have just been that. That's just a lazy thought if you think that. And he'll have another first rounder under his belt or two this year when Greg Little and AJ Brown go pro.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, yeah. Speaking of baseball, AJ Brown, another beast on the diamond.
So I think that'll wrap up today's live show. Again, guys, thank you guys for coming out. Thank you guys for joining in on the conversation. We always appreciate it, and we're always humbled by your continued support. If you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel and press the bell so you get notifications whenever we go live, whenever we post videos or any other content on YouTube. Also, check out the website. Make sure that if you go to the website, you're signing up for an account. We got
it's free.
It's free. There's no charge. There's not going to be a charge. And so we want to be able to send you guys email updates and stuff like that. We're not going to sell your email information or anything like that for money. But we do want to send you email updates, newsletters of that sort. So please sign up for an account on the website. It's free. It's free.
Free 99.
$3.99. So go ahead and do that for us, please, if you want to receive updates via email from us. Also, go check out the socials at Crimson and Blue Chips on Facebook, CABC Pod on Twitter, and CABC Pod on Instagram. And I'll let John finish it off.
All right, Kev, a.k.a. Thanos. We appreciate everybody stopping by. Wanted to get a little bit more into recruiting today, and it turned out we hit on a lot of different topics. So always fun to hang out with you guys. Thanks for stopping by. Again, like Kev said, subscribe. We were on a bad number yesterday.
Yeah.
Thank you for whoever that 667th subscriber was, because didn't want to stay on that other number very long. It's just a bad omen. It's the holiday season. Everyone's traveling. I mean, I'm going to be on the road all day to Auburn tomorrow.
Those problems.
Yeah, nobody needs those problems. So thank you to number 667. We appreciate you very much, whoever you may be. But thanks for listening, everybody. Catch us on iTunes as well. As Kev said, they run a great website over there. It's free, a lot of content flowing, and yours truly, same deal. State championship bound to Auburn University tomorrow. So catch our updates from there, Kev. Thanks for doing what you do, and everybody, thanks for hanging out once again. We'll see you soon in the next few days with another CABC podcast. God bless Garcia and the crew. We're out.